can continue. It's already 10 past. Others will find on here as we proceed. Now, last time we looked at framework for project management, and we said that's how the Project Management Institute, which is highly respected in terms of project management, suggests we should carry projects. So it suggested some knowledge areas or things that you need to consider when you are doing project management. And it also suggested some project groups. Because we said a project is made up of many entities. So, and many people. So you will need to create groups. So it came up with a group. Now, just like I said, that is a framework. A framework is a skeleton, and it's for you to fill in the intricate details. Projects vary. Like software projects are different from architectural projects. They are different from civil construction projects, and so on. And because of that, it doesn't give strict rules. It doesn't insist that you should strictly follow those guidelines. But it's giving you a framework for the things to consider when you try to manage a project. And that's how it came up with those frameworks. Now, having said that, I've said a project is done by many people. You hardly do a project for yourself. And because it's done by many people, we have to consider human factors. Now, these many people have an interest in the project. And because they have an interest in the project, we call them stakeholders. They may affect the project, and they may be affected by the project. So they get interested in the project. So here we are dealing with people with a diverse interest in the project. People are very complex entities. People reason. People have feelings. People are affected by the environment. People have different objectives. So you need to know how to deal with these people. So today's lecture is going to be dedicated to project stakeholders. So let me just present. So today, we are just basically going to deal with the project stakeholders. So at the end of this lecture, the learner should be able to describe who a project stakeholder is, and two, explain what is involved in managing stakeholders. And because I've said we have stakeholders are diverse. So we need to know, we need to describe what a stakeholder is, and we need to see how we can manage these stakeholders. So this is the stakeholder context. Now, and we find they're at different levels. Now we have what is called the management board, or what some people would want to call sponsors. Now, these are at the core of the project. And I think last time we had a brief discussion with somebody raised a question, and we had a brief discussion about it, where he was asking, how do you differentiate between a management board and a sponsor? Now, how to differentiate it depends on the organization and on the policies. If we go to a public university, for example, the government puts in funds for infrastructure, they put in funds to pay lecturers and so on. So we could say that the government is the sponsor. But the university has a university management board, which manages the funds that the university, that the government puts in. And by virtue of managing those funds, they report to the government. And it's the University Management Board which will make requests for additional funds. Now, if you've been reading newspapers, the past, by now you're in third year, I think the past 3 years, you've been seeing that universities are in the red in terms of money. Now, the reason being is that the government decided to cut their funding to universities, and they told universities to start raising their own money through research, through innovations, and so on. And if you are not able to do that, then you go in the red. You have debts. So what I'm just trying to show you is that there's a relationship between. We sometimes need to differentiate the management board and the sponsor. Now, if you go to private universities, USIU, Daystar, and Group, you may find that the management board and the sponsor end up being the same thing. Now, core to this arrangement is what I'm calling the project manager and the project team. And then we have what are called suppliers, contractors, end users, and customers. Now, suppliers only become important once a project has started. Contractors only become important while a project has started because they will supply certain goods. End users are the people who are going to use this product that the project team will produce, and end users could as well be the customers. The line between end users and customers is very thin. So some people could treat them differently. Some people could treat them as the same. Or some people will just say, these are the end users. These are the people who are going to use. Now, what normally happens, it is the end users or the customers who are going to make requests. They are going to say, we want the university to be able to do, we want a system to be able to do these things. Now, going back to the University of Nairobi, we need a website to advertise us externally. In other words, outside the precincts or the walls of the university. Because like I've said, the funding from the government has decreased, and the government is telling us, collect money, find means and ways of collecting money. We are not giving you money. So what happens? You introduce parallel courses to get this extra money. Now, when you do that, then you are going to say, these are the customers. I mean, because these are people who are external to the university system. So you will try to see what is going to appeal to the customers. So you will design your website based on that. Now, within the university, we have lecturers. They want a platform they use to teach. They want a system that will record their exam, that will register students, and so on. So you can see what I'm driving at. Why I'm saying that sometimes that line is very thin. Sometimes the end users are the customers, but sometimes you could differentiate them. Like those people who want to join the University of Nairobi, the only thing they can access is the website of the University of Nairobi. But lecturers need other services from the University of Nairobi. So lecturers will want a platform where they will use to teach, like Google Class, where they'll want to enter the marks. The admin will want students to register for courses, will want a system that will allow them to know who has paid and who has not paid, who is eligible to sit exams, and so on. The examination department will want a place where they can display their results, and so on. So, based on these two, a project comes up. The project comes up by the ICT department telling the management, university management board, we need an integrated system. We need a system that has a website which will allow people external to the university, which will advertise the university so that people external to the university know about the university. We want this system where students can register for courses. They don't have to be physically in the university. We want a system where students pay money and we know how the money, who has paid and who has not. We want the examinations department says, we don't want students streaming into our offices. We want to display it. So you can see there are various things that this integrated system is going to do. So the management, the ICT communicates with the management board, and it's the ICT who knows the requirements of the end users and the customers. And based on those requirements, they will come up with a budget. We shall look at how budgeting comes in. They will come up with a budget which they'll give to the management board. Now the management board has to look for money. So they may go to the government or they look for alternative means. And then out of this, assuming that the sponsor agrees to give that money, then the project is set to go on. Now, the moment the project starts, we'll have suppliers who will supply things. They may supply machines. They may supply software platforms, and so on. Then we'll have contractors in case you want to build a specialized room to host where this system will be best. And then on the periphery, we have standards bodies, we have media. These ones will not directly interact with the system. You will send an advert in the newspapers and say, if you want to join this University of Nairobi, go to this website. You will announce it on TV. You will announce it on radio. Then there are people you are going to compete with. Like now, public universities and private universities are competing from the same pool of students who want to join the university. So, and I'm sure you've been hearing of certain universities advertising more than others. All universities talk about their vision, their mission, and their strengths, and so on. So these are on the peripheral. So all these people are going to be affected, or they are going to affect the project. So we need to know how to manage all these people who I am now calling stakeholders. So this diagram summarizes the stakeholder context. So who is a stakeholder? A stakeholder are people or organizations with an interest in the project, who can affect a project or who may be affected by a project. Now, stakeholders may be within the organization or external to it. So, up to this point, some are within, some are external to it. But the management board, sponsor, and project team are internal to the project. End users could be external to the project. Sorry, end users could be internal to the project. Customers could be external to the project. But government, standard bodies, media, competitors, and so on are external to the project because they are not within that institution. So, who are the internal stakeholders? Internal stakeholders are internal to the project team, or they could be external to the project team, but within the same organization. Like, I am in University of Nairobi. I am a stakeholder in the sense that there are certain things I want automated. But it's the ICT team which is going to develop the product. I will not go there at all. The only thing they'll ask me is, what do you want this system to do for you as a lecturer? So I'm external to the project team, but I'm internal to the institution. So internal stakeholders may be managers, staff, other department heads, your own team, and subject matter experts. External stakeholders may be from anywhere, other companies, public bodies, legislative bodies, and competitors. So, like I said, these are core to the project. These are only within the project by virtue of they're only there as long as the project is not complete. After the project is complete, they are external to the project. I said there's a thin line between these two, so they may be internal to the project, they may be external to the project. So why do we need to identify stakeholders? We need to identify the stakeholders first because stakeholders can affect a project because they have an interest in it. So we need to identify them. And it could be anything. The media can affect a project. They can say, okay, why is the government giving the University of Nairobi 1 billion shillings for an integrated system? This system can be got for 400 million. Why are they spending 1 billion shillings? So you'll find there'll be a lot of politics around this project. So some of these stakeholders look like they are not, they will not affect the project, but in the long run, like lobby groups, can affect a project. So an issue about stakeholders is that if persons in positions to affect the project are not known, how can we plan to either use or guard against their influence? And I've given an example of lobby groups. I've given an example of the media. They can affect a project. You will find an MP. You may think he has no influence in the project. He goes to Parliament and raises an issue where they are going to insist that they want somebody from top management to come in and say why they have released this money. And you'll find that a project is stopping by virtue of that. So if we need to identify stakeholders, because if stakeholders are not identified and they have negative attitudes, it can lead to problems or failure in the project. And then in the converse, if a project stakeholder is missed, then the opportunity to have a helping hand assisting delivering the project output is missed. So you need to know the people who will negatively impact on the project and the people who will positively impact on the project. So what do the stakeholders do? And what they do may not seem so obvious, but it is important. As sponsors, stakeholders, and champions, project champions, link the team to the management power structure across locations and organizational boundaries. So these stakeholders could be the link between the various entities that are involved with the project. So for you to know more or to focus on the stakeholders, there are certain things you need to do. So we can classify stakeholders in three main ways. One, you can classify a stakeholder by their view of the project. How do these people view the project? Are they positive? Are they negative? Or are they neutral to a project? Then, by their degree of by the degree of influence they may wield. Do they have a strong degree of influence? Do they have a weak, medium degree of influence? A weak, or they don't have no degree of influence? And then their ability to stop or veto the project. Are they decision makers, influencers, consenters, or are they interested? So you need to know, you need to classify them so that you know how to treat them. There are some you will ignore, and then there are some you cannot afford to ignore. So you want somebody who is positive to the project, whose degree of influence is strong, and who you look at whether he has the ability to stop the project. Because there are some people, they are so powerful that they can stop the project. Now, like this, the veto is a word that is normally used worldwide, especially with the United Nations. Now, like with the United Nations, we have what are called veto powers. America is a veto power, China is a veto power. Now, what we mean by a veto power is that United Nations may pass a resolution or may want to pass a resolution. And most of the members will say, no, this resolution is good. But the moment a veto power comes in, if the US says no, even if 50 states said yes, by virtue of the fact that US has said no, that decision is not going to be taken. So the same thing with projects. We have people who, depending on what they say, the project will proceed or not proceed. Now, the stakeholder influence may as well change as the project develops. So analysis should be done at the start and then revisited periodically. You will find that as a project is proceeding, somebody may have had a very strong influence initially. But as the project proceeds, his influence wanes or fades away. So once you've done what is called stakeholder analysis, which we shall be looking at in a few minutes, you need to keep going back to the stakeholder analysis template to check what is the status of this influencer. So how can stakeholders affect a project? There are various ways. They can affect a project politically. Someone will go and say, someone will go to parliament, and this politically mainly deals with politicians. He'll go and say, this project is not good. You've seen what has been happening with affordable housing. Now, actually, that's a very good project. Affordable housing is a building construction project or an architectural project. But you have seen how it has been affected by political influencers, somebody like Okiya Mtata. He goes to parliament, he goes to court, and the project is stopped. It could be financial. The sponsor says, okay, I'm not giving this money. The bank, you have a project. The bank tells you, give us your give us your formal project statement, your project proposal. You take it to the bank. The bank tells you this is not viable. We can't give you the 30 million you require because you're not going to pay us in the 5 years you've said you're going to pay us. It could be a resource provider, supplier says, I'm supplying you so much next week. Next week reaches, he has supplied nothing. It could be an influencer, where an influencer could be political, it could be media, it could be moral. But most times, influencers could be lobby groups. Like you saw there's a road in Nyandarua which was supposed to be built. The money, the political will is there. And by virtue of the political will being there, the money is going to be there. Now, Greenpeace, people dealing with the environment, come and say, no, this is going to affect our environment. It's going to divide the forest into two. So how will elephants be crossing? Now, building a road is a project. But environmentalists, National Environment Management Agency, have said, don't do this. It's going to affect us. So they are external to the project, but they have an influence. The customers may not buy the product. Customers will refuse to buy that product. And if customers refuse to buy that product, it will not pay for itself. So it's going to affect the project. And then people who advocate against the product, for example, pressure groups, like, I don't know if you remember some time back, Kenchik sells chicken and chips, is a company that does that. They had said something about not buying chicken from Kenya. So I don't know where they were supposed to get their chicken from. So there was a lobby group which said, okay, so why should we buy chicken from Egypt or potatoes? Actually, it was potatoes, not even chicken. It was potatoes. They were saying that the chips made from potatoes that are grown in Kenya are not as sweet as the chips made from potatoes in Egypt. So what happens? That affects the project. So this, as you can see, then we need to study stakeholders because they'll affect the project. They can determine whether the project goes on or not. So how do stakeholders also affect a project? Because it could be one of these, or it could be a combination of any of these. So you need to study stakeholders. Now, to study stakeholders, you need to do what is called stakeholder management. Now, stakeholder management supports an organization in achieving its strategic objectives. Now, anytime somebody talks to you about strategic objectives, he is talking about the future. When we say anytime the word strategic is used, it's talking about the future. So what are your future objectives? Your future objectives is to make money. You want the product to make money for you. You want the product to pay or the expenses that you used in a certain time. So the two ways strategic management supports an organization in achieving its strategic objectives is by interpreting and influencing both internal and external environments. So strategic stakeholder management means that you need to look at the internal stakeholders and external stakeholders and see how they will affect your project. So you must interpret their actions and you must know how they are going to influence. And then stakeholder management enables creating positive relationship with stakeholders through the appropriate management of their expectations and agreed objectives. It is a process and control that must be planned and guided by underlying principles. So you must plan for it. And you must use certain principles. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that you must formally go out and do what is called stakeholder management. So it's not a by the way thing. You have to go out of your way to formalize the process. So within a business or project, stakeholder management prepares a strategy utilizing information or intelligence gathered during the following common processes. So, like I've said, it's not a by the way thing, it's something you go out to formally do. Now, the three things you must do is you must do what is called stakeholder identification, which you must do stakeholder analysis. And to do the stakeholder analysis, you must have what is called a stakeholder matrix. Now, in stakeholder identification, you must identify the interested parties who may be internal or external to the project. Then in stakeholder analysis, you must recognize and acknowledge stakeholder needs, concerns, wants, authority, common relationships, interfaces, and align this information within the stakeholder matrix. And that's what I said, the stakeholder matrix and stakeholder analysis. Okay, stakeholder matrix is basically just a tool that formalizes stakeholder analysis. Now, stakeholder matrix is positioning stakeholders according to their level of interest and their impact or enhancement, they may provide to the business or its projects. So we go into the details, of these three things. So identifying stakeholders. So in identifying the stakeholders, you analyze. First of all, you have to see who can affect my project. And this is where you go into this stakeholder context. So you must identify which standards am I going to use coming up with this software project? Which ISO standard am I going to use? Meaning you must identify the standards body. And if it's not ISO, which other standards body am I going to use? Now, this is important because we said quality is important in a product. You must identify suppliers, you must identify your contractors, your end users, your customers. So, of course, this is not covering everything. So you must know you must know who has interest in the project, who can affect the project, or who may be affected by the project. Now, these are just some of the few people who come under these three questions. So after you have identified the stakeholders, you must analyze their expectations and their impact on the project. So later on, we shall see that template. So you must develop appropriate management strategies for effectively involving stakeholders in project decisions and execution. So some of the things that you'll need to do is you look at top management, your manager, your peers, resource managers, internal customers, external customers, government, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, and others. Now, this list is not exhaustive. So, first of all, you need to identify them. And after identifying them, you need to know what are their expectations and their impact on the project. Then, after you have identified them, you are going to do what is called stakeholder analysis. You have put a list of the stakeholders and you are putting them in a formal template. The next thing is to analyze who are they, but you will have known who they are from here. First of all, I think I should have answered. I should have put there a bullet from the stakeholder identification. What are their interests? Will their interest level vary throughout the project? I've said that sometimes, and that's why we have to go back to the stakeholder management template. Because as the project proceeds, you'll find that somebody was very interested initially in the project, but as time goes, their interest goes down. The project manager should be able, together with the project team, identify these times and see what corrective action can be, what corrective action that is going to can be taken. Then you need to know whether you can build a coalition. This person, I know, is a stakeholder. In what way can I use him? Because his level of influence is so big, how can I use him so that my project succeeds? Now, in stakeholder analysis, we use formal tools. We use the power interest grid, and we use the stakeholder analysis template. So, apart from those, we have other stakeholder management tools, like we've talked about power interest matrix, cooperation threat matrix. Then we have stakeholder analysis template, stakeholder register, and then the communication plan. So we look at the first one, power interest matrix. Now, these are formal tools. Now, the power interest matrix was suggested in the project management body of knowledge guide. Remember, last week we were saying that the Project Management Institute came up with the project management body of knowledge. Now, project management body of knowledge is a document. Now, right now it's in the 7th edition. Now you will find that different editions introduce different things and assume knowledge of the previous editions. Now, what we mean by assume knowledge of the previous editions, the project management body of knowledge, 7th edition, which is the current one, may talk about things, may miss out things which were written in the 6th edition. Now, that doesn't mean that those things are not important. Like if you look at the 7th edition, it doesn't list out the body of knowledge. It does not list out the groups. it will not, you may not find this. And that's why I'm saying it assumes that knowledge. When I say it assumes that knowledge, it assumes that by the time you're reading the 7th edition, you have some knowledge in the earlier editions. So it's assuming that you have that knowledge. Otherwise, if it doesn't make those assumptions, it's going to be a very big document. So the power interest matrix was suggested in the Project Management Body of Knowledge Guide 5th edition. So the power interest grid or power interest matrix is a tool for identifying, categorizing, and managing stakeholders. The project managers can create a grid early in a project and use it through the project's phases, from conception to completion, to manage stakeholder communication and ensure satisfaction. Now, this is the power interest grid. On the y-axis, it's talking about power, from low power to high power, and it's talking about interest, from low power to high power. Now, you only use it after you have identified, because remember, I've said these are stakeholder management tools. These are tools that we use for analysis, but you can't analyze if you haven't identified the subject. So what we are going to say, you are going to look at who are the stakeholders. And for each stakeholder, you are going to use this power interest matrix to know how to treat them. Now, for example, if a person has low interest in the project, but has a lot of power, how do you treat them? You treat them by keeping them satisfied. You see, he is not interested in the project, but he has a lot of power. An MP may not be interested in an integrated system in the University of Nairobi, and is external to this project, but he has a lot of power. There are things he can raise up in Parliament, and based on the decisions in Parliament, the sponsor, the government, will be told, you are wasting money on this project. So for such a person, you need to find ways of keeping him satisfied. Now, but if a person has low power and has no interest, you keep monitoring him. Now, why do you keep monitoring him? You keep monitoring him because we have said, as a project proceeds, certain variables change. And you may find that as the project proceeds, he develops an interest. He was not interested, but somebody is talking about these integrated systems in the University of Nairobi. And he's talking about it so much in the newspaper. Then he gets interested. Now, the moment he gets interested, his interest moves from being low to being high. Now, if a person has a lot of interest in the project, but he has very little power, now keep him informed, keep giving him information, because as you give him information, he's interested. So he's going to look for information. So do not deny him information. Keep him informed. The reason you keep him informed, because like I've said, as the project changes, certain variables change. Now, when these variables change, you may find that initially this person was an agitator in the streets. You can imagine somebody like Okiya Omtatah. He's now a senator. He was just an agitator. But right now, he's a senator. He's in a position of influence. You started your project when he was not a senator. But you have been saying things about this project. So he has been interested in this project by virtue of being a student of the University of Nairobi. So you are informing him. He knows about this. But now you see, with time, his power has changed. So that's why we are saying if somebody's interest is low and his power is low, you keep him informed because you never know. His power could be increased. Now, if a person is powerful and he has an interest in a project, you manage him closely. Talk to him, keep giving him information because he is powerful and he is interested. He may change the direction of that project. He may say, this project is very useful. I think we should even give them an extra $500 million. So you can see we've identified the stakeholder, and we are also coming up using this matrix, seeing how we are going to treat these stakeholders. And these are not static things. These are things which move as the project is proceeding. So that is the power interest matrix. Then the other tool that we use is what is called the cooperation threat matrix. So the cooperation threat matrix is a table which looks at the potential for cooperation. Is this person, can we cooperate with him? Or potentially, is he going to be a threat to our project? So is this person we are likely to cooperate with, or can he affect our project? Now, the cooperation threat matrix gives us ways in which, in how we are going to deal with this stakeholder. So, for example, if the potential for cooperation is high and the potential for threat is low, it means that this person is supportive. In other words, he's a guy you can easily cooperate with, and is somebody who is not a threat. Now, if you can cooperate with somebody and is not a threat to your project, then he is supportive. So how do you treat him? Involve him in the project. Then if the potential for cooperation is low and the potential for threat is low, then you say he is marginal. You don't know whether he is going to be useful to the project or not. He's on a borderline case. So the strategy to deal with this person is to keep monitoring him, because he may jump. He may decide initially he was not cooperating with the project, and probably because he didn't have information about the project. But then he now has information for the project. So he jumps from being marginal to being supportive. And there could be a situation where the potential for cooperation is low, but the potential for threat is high. This is not a person you would want to antagonize. So this person we categorize him as being non-supportive. So for this kind of person, you need to defend your project. You need to explain to him the benefits of your project. And if the potential for cooperation is high and the potential for threat is high, we can label him as a mixed blessing. So for this person, collaborate with him. Talk to him. Try to see how you can involve him in the project. So that is the cooperation threat matrix. Now, all these things, like I've said, when we are doing stakeholder analysis, we have to formalize it. Now, this is an example of how we formalize the analysis. You have the stakeholder. Remember, you have identified the stakeholder. So you need to give the stakeholder, you need to put the stakeholder's name and you need to put their roles. Then you need to determine how important is this person, where he'll vary from being low to being high. Now, the level of importance is determined by these two: the power interest matrix and the cooperation threat matrix. Then you need to look at the current level of support, whether it's low, medium, or high. Then you need to determine what you want from the stakeholder. You need to determine what is important to the stakeholder. You need to also look at how the stakeholder could block your efforts. And you need to say what your strategy for enhancing stakeholder, what your strategy is going to be for enhancing support. Now, and you have seen here, you are picking these strategies. You monitor, you defend, you involve, you collaborate. And we have also seen here the strategies: keep satisfied, manage closely, monitor, keep informed. So these two, and there's somewhere I said, so within businesses or project, it prepares a strategy utilizing information or intelligence gathered during these processes. So you have gathered that intelligence. Once you've gathered this intelligence, you put it into this table, into the stakeholder analysis table. So, and this is not a static table. As the project proceeds, you'll have to keep revisiting it. And as you revisit it, you change your strategy of how you are going to deal with that stakeholder. Then we have what is called the stakeholder register. Now, the stakeholder register is a table used throughout the project, and it's used to manage interactions with the stakeholders. Now, it lists all the stakeholders and stakeholder groups. Information is added and updated throughout the phases of the project. In other words, the interests, involvements, interdependencies, and influence of the project success. It also lists all the interactions with each stakeholder or group, whether planned or not, whether initiated by the project or by the stakeholder, and then who on the project team is the project team is responsible. Now, it's closely related to the project communication plan. Now, here, notice I'm talking about stakeholders and stakeholder groups. A stakeholder could be only one person. A stakeholder could be a group. One person, I've named it like Okiya Mtata, a group. I've said a lobby group, the Greenpeace movement, people who do not want the environment to be damaged. Now, in that case, you're not going to be dealing with a particular person. You're going to be dealing with a group which is called the Greenpeace group. So you must have that register, and this register goes along with this. So communicating information. Now, when you're dealing with stakeholders, you must give them information. So why is it important? It's important because expectations are established and agreed for them and agreed for the manner in which communications are managed between stakeholders. So with these stakeholders, you must determine who is going to receive the communication. If it's a group, there must be a lead for that group. A group could have 100 people. Now, if you want to reach this group, who are you going to talk to? You must establish that. You must establish when the communication is going to be done. Are we going to be meeting weekly? And remember, stakeholders are different. There are these stakeholders you can meet on a daily basis. there are stakeholders you can meet on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, or a quarterly basis. So you must know when you are going to be meeting the stakeholder. You must know how is the information is going to be communicated. Will I be calling him? Will I be sending him an email? Will I be using a WhatsApp group? Or how am I going to do it? And then to what level of detail is the information conveyed? You can't keep giving the stakeholders all the details about your project. You will give a stakeholder information that only pertains to his part. So don't just give details about the project, because your project has some details which are confidential. Let's say you are implementing a banking system. Banking systems need to be highly secure. So, and the banking systems have many stakeholders. So you are not going to talk to these stakeholders everything about the project. Like if it's an ATM system, you're not going to tell me about the security features. If it's an ATM system, you'll only communicate to me as a customer of that bank about the user interface. How easy is it to use this system? What would you want on the screen? And you stop at that. But you don't give me the details of the security mechanisms you put in the database. So protocols may be established, including security and confidentiality classifications. You need to differentiate components of the system in terms of the security and confidentiality features. So we've seen stakeholder management. Now we look at what is called stakeholder engagement. Now, stakeholder, and some people try to think that these two, engagement and management, are the same. They are not the same. So different to stakeholder management, in other words, stakeholder engagement is different from stakeholder management in the sense that engagement does not seek to develop the project or business requirements or the solution, or it doesn't need to create a solution or to create a problem. Engagement does not need to establish the roles and responsibilities of stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement is primarily focused at getting to know and understand each other at an executive level. So stakeholder engagement is informal in a way. It's where you are talking in a language that you both can agree. So engagement is the opportunity to discuss and agree expectations of communication. And it's primarily agree on a set of values and principles that all stakeholders will abide by. So it's at a high level where you talk to this stakeholder and you agree on how you'll be communicating, whether it's informally or formally. Then you look at, you set out certain values. Like let's take the example of a lobby group. A lobby group may have 100 people. So in stakeholder engagement, you will call a meeting where you will discuss, this is the person who we shall be talking with, this is how we shall be communicating, and so on. And in that engagement, you are telling the stakeholders, these are our policies. If it's a health information system, you will say, yes, this system is managing customer data. Customer data is confidential, so there's certain information I'm not going to give you. So basically, it's an informal way of establishing a rapport between the people who are core to the project and the people who are external to the project. So to do this, you need to know certain levels of engagement. You need to know these stakeholders that I'm dealing with, are they aware of the project? So it ranges from being unaware to being leading. So unaware, you need to, so when you're dealing with the stakeholders, you need to know at which level you are dealing with them. If they are unaware, you will tell them about the project. You'll give them information about the project. He is unaware, but yet he's a stakeholder because you've done stakeholder analysis. You know this person is going to be affected by the project, and this person is going to affect the project. But he is unaware of the project. So you will need to give him, the level of engagement is going to be different. Then, or he could be leading, could be somebody, he's a stakeholder, yes, but he is very conversant with the project. So what you want to do is you want him to help you with the project. So you want to use his stored knowledge to help your project. Now you can see that the levels of engagement now vary. The kind of information you are giving stakeholders vary dependent on their expertise and dependent on their on the amount of information that they have. So it's a continuum from unaware, where you have to give them information about the project, to leading, where you'll want to use his expertise to ensure that your project is more successful. So for each stakeholder or group, consider potential movement from one level to another throughout the project. So when you engage stakeholders, have at the back of your mind the fact that it can move from being unaware to being leading. Some people resist projects because they don't know. They just resist. But the moment they get information, they realize the value of the project. And then they are leading. They are the people who promote that project. So to manage stakeholder engagement includes communicating and working with the stakeholders to meet their needs and expectations. And you need to do this to increase support and reduce resistance from the stakeholders, and to increase the probability of project success. If you move somebody from being unaware to being leading, your project is going to be very successful. If a person was leading and you start the project and you start denying him information, he is going to change from leading to unaware. He doesn't know how your project is proceeding. So having done that, you have identified the stakeholders, you have analyzed them, you've come up with strategies of how to deal with them. Then you need to come into agreement. Now, here we are talking about stakeholder agreements. You'll need to have agreements with different stakeholders, because just like we said when we began this lecture, stakeholders could be internal or external. So for each stakeholder, you need to have an agreement. So stakeholder agreements is a collection of agreed decisions between stakeholders. This may be the lexicon or vocabulary of an organization or project, or the values of an initiative, the objectives or the model of the organization, and so on. Now, we have seen we have different types of projects. In ICT, you could have a project of coming up with a network. An institution wants a network, so that becomes a project, laying out a network. It could be coming up with a system, like University of Nairobi health management system. Now, the lexicon, the vocabulary that is going to be used in the health management system is not going to be the same as the vocabulary that is going to be used in a network deployment system. In a network deployment system, you'll be talking about of terms like cables, twisted pair, fiber cables, switches, switches, routers, wireless connectivity. And when you're talking to the university health management system, you'll be talking about patients, consultants, and so on. So you will need, between the person developing the project or doing the project and the stakeholder, you'll need to have an understanding on the lexicon, the vocabulary that you're going to use for communication. You will need to come up with an agreement on the policies. If it's a health management system, you will say patient confidentiality. We do not release. The stakeholder will tell you, we don't release patient information. They'll tell you, this is the level of security I need. If you're dealing with a network project, you'll need to talk about security in terms of viruses and hacking and so on. So these agreements, and because you're dealing with different stakeholders, you will need to sign. You need to sign on the lexicon you're going to use. You'll need to sign on the objectives of the project and so on. So contemporary or modern business and project practice favors transparent, honest, and open stakeholder management processes. Then, because we've defined who a stakeholder is, we've defined how you do management, then you must have a stakeholder management plan. Now, the stakeholder management plan is a component of the project management plan that captures the desired and current engagement levels with stakeholder, the scope and impact of project on the stakeholders, the interrelationship between the stakeholders, the stakeholder communication requirements and plan, the time frame, frequency, format, and content of planned communication to the stakeholders, and the method for updating the stakeholder management plan. And by the way, this in project management, these come as templates, which are downloadable. With the time, I will be giving you some of these templates, or I'll create a folder where I'll give you samples of these templates. Now, when I say samples, what I mean is, and why I'm calling them templates, is that they just give you guidelines on the things to look at. They are templates because you don't have to follow them. They are not cast in stone. You don't have to follow them strictly, but they are just telling you, this is a template, you can modify it to suit your needs. So, any questions so far? Any question? So that is stakeholder management. Now we want to talk about specific stakeholders. And today we are only going to talk about stakeholders that are internal to the project. Now, why am I not talking about the ones external to the project? So we are just going to talk about these ones. We are going to talk about these ones. Why I'm not going to talk about these ones, because yes, they're stakeholders, but they are so diverse and different that how you treat them will just follow these general principles that I've been talking about. So we start with the project sponsor. This project sponsor is the person or group responsible for enabling success. They may be inside, but the sponsor is maybe inside, but is usually outside the project. I go back to what I was talking about, the university. There's the government, then the university management board, then the university itself. Now, the university you see, the government is external to the project, but the government is the one giving the money. They give the money to the university, but who is the university? The university are many things, many people. The university is the students, the lecturers, the administration, and so on. So the university comes up with a university management board, UMB. When the government gives money, first of all, it's the university management board which tells the government what is happening to the university. I will never meet the Minister for Education, but I'm in the university, but he's a stakeholder. So this is why I was saying a sponsor may be inside, but is usually outside the project. Even the university management board. I am core to the university. In all the years I've been in university, I've never met any member of the board. You saw the other day there was some fracas about the minister and how he appointed the board and so on. They are stakeholders. But I am in the university, I'll never talk to them, but they're stakeholders. They affect how the university is being run. The project sponsor signs off that the project is complete. When the ICT produces this integrated system, they will report to the university management board because they have to account to how that money, that 1 billion shillings that you are given, how was it used? This is the product. They'll demonstrate to the university management board. The university management board will in turn talk to the sponsor, the government, and they'll have to account. You see a lot of these days, the Auditor General keeps raising queries about how projects are being run. They say this road was supposed to cost so much. The other day you heard about the project about building offices for the legislature. Initially starts at 5 billion. Now the bill has gone up to 9 billion. It's not complete. The Auditor General raises queries about that. So there's somebody who has to sign that the project is complete, and the person who has to sign is the project sponsor. So the project sponsor has to be satisfied by the project manager. Now, the project sponsor is the person responsible for escalating issues that are beyond control of the project manager. Let's talk about the university ICT system. They requested for 1 billion. The project is not complete. They are saying that we need 0.2 billion shillings. Somebody has to ask for that. Why? So the project sponsor plays a significant role in developing the initial charter and the project plan. We shall be looking at these two. Then we have the project manager. Now, I believe I talked about the project manager. So I'm not going to talk about this. I think in the introduction I talked about this. I think you have that table. It's possible that I copied from these lectures to that one. Then there is the project team. The project team is responsible for initiating, planning, executing, controlling, monitoring, and closing down a project. So you have noticed that the three things I've been talking about are this. These are core to the project, directly involved in the project. We have the project manager, we have the project team, we have the sponsor, which I've talked about. These other ones, I said I'm not talking about because they are diverse and how they relate to the project varies from time to time. Now, when you undertake to do a project, you need to know that there will be a lot of politics around the projects. Now, the reason there will be a lot of politics around projects is that the projects may be affected by the environment. You need to know the goals of each stakeholder or group, where you need to know the goals that are openly stated or clear, and the goals that have hidden agenda, and you need to know the power structure surrounding the project. So, like I said, that the road, that's about a month ago. That road cutting through I think it's Aberdare Forest. Constructing that road is a project. NEMA has said, yes, the environment is going, first of all, it starts, before you do any project of that nature, you must go to NEMA, National Environment Management Agency. NEMA says there's no, this project shouldn't go through this forest because it is going along the migratory path of the elephants. So the moment you put it there, how will elephants be moving? This is going to escalate the human-wildlife conflict. So this project shouldn't go on. The environmentalists come and they say, they add voice to that. This project should not go on. Now, what happens? Somebody, for whatever reason, has decided this project has to go on. And this is where power comes in. And you've noticed that I was talking about the power interest matrix. So you look at a person who has a lot of power and a lot of interest. And this is a project. So these two lobby groups argue the project is stalled. But one of the stakeholders who is more powerful than them comes and says, "Does NEMA approve this project?" The project is approved. The project is going on, despite protests. So when you are dealing with a project, you should be aware, and because the politics will affect whether the project will proceed or not. So you cannot ignore politics. You cannot treat projects in isolation of politics. So during the planning phase, you need to look at the politics of the project. You also need to look at the cultural influences. Groups and individuals may differ with regard to communications, negotiations, and decision making. So you need to build relationships with the stakeholders. So you need to analyze stakeholders, you need to assess their influence, you need to understand the expectations, you need to define success, you need to keep the stakeholders involved, you need to keep the stakeholders informed. So, how do you do that? You need, as a person, because I told you right from the onset, stakeholders are people. People are subject to these things, cultural influences. So you must build respect if the project is to go to successful completion. You must be honest. You must take ownership. You know, taking ownership is, somebody is in a project. He's a team member of the project team, but he keeps talking about that project as if it's not his. Anytime he's asked a question, he says, those people that I'm working with, those people are illiterate, those people, they're tribalistic. Ownership means you don't talk about those people. You talk we in this project. You are a part of the project. That is what we mean by taking ownership. Don't behave as if you are in the project and you are outside the project. And there are many examples of this. I'm sure you keep reading them in the media. So you should be predictable and reliable. You should stand by your decisions. People say that people say this. It's better to take a decision, no, or rather, it's better to take a bad decision than to take no decision at all. Now, if it's a bad decision, stand by that decision. People make mistakes. Then you must be able to take accountability for mistakes. 80% of the people transfer mistakes to other people. Sometimes it's honorable. You get more respected if you agree, yes, I made a mistake. Yeah, you say it's me who made a mistake. Don't say so and so made a mistake. So finally, is that supportive stakeholders are essential to project success. This is what we've been talking about all the time. So in summary, stakeholder management involves stakeholders, and stakeholders are people, groups, or organizations that could impact or be impacted by the project. Managing stakeholders is a key success factor for projects. Analyze stakeholder interests and level of influence, build coalitions, communicate with stakeholders. And that brings us to the end of today's lecture. Any questions? Make sure you send the attendance over East. I tried as